My name is Christopher Oscar. I was born in Montclair, New Jersey. I attended Long Island University, CW Post campus, where I studied journalism. Got my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in journalism, communications department. And it was there where I worked for the college newspaper called The Pioneer. As a reporter for The Pioneer, I basically took up students' rights, and I would write stories that focused on the campus conditions or the bookstore and how they would sell books for $70 and then you go to return them and get a few bucks back. But I really found I was passionate about fighting for the rights of others while I was a student journalism major there at CW Post College. As a journalism major at CW Post campus, most of the stories I wrote were investigative pieces, and I started to learn some things. One was there was a study that was done that I came upon that talked about the coverage of crimes that were happening across America and how the actual, it was in the 1990s where crime had actually been on the decline. Yet crime coverage in corporate media was on this steady climb up to almost like 70%, while crime was down 30%. And the study went on to find that it was the ratings and the eyeballs of the viewers that was causing the corporate media stations to actually cover more of these crimes and show them off more, even though crime was deteriorating and going down. And so that was something that really caught my eye, because it kind of showed a false picture of what was happening in our society. And so that was one of the investigative pieces that I was doing while I was on campus. The other things I did, which had to do directly to what was happening with students on campus and the conditions of the dorms and things of that nature, led me to run for president of school. So I got into a whole campaign spreading the word of what I felt the students needed to know. Went door to door, knocking on doors, and really tried to educate and inform the people of the campus. After going through and working with all of that, I ended up, they hired me on as an advertising manager for the school paper. And it was through advertising that I ended up getting a career as an advertising newspaper person, and I ended up as an account executive out here in California for the Sonoma Index-Tribune. So I moved out here, California, in 1996. I moved right here to Sonoma. I've been here the past 16 years. In any case, in '96, when I was out here in California, I had an astrology reading by Betty Tim, and it was pretty intense. You know, she was going over a lot of things in my life that were really accurate and what was happening and direction I was going. And towards the end of the reading, she said, "You know, Chris, there's something I see in your chart that speaks to social justice and fighting for the rights of others." And it really, you know, a light bulb went off, because that's what I was really passionate about and into in college. And so I said, yeah, you know, that is something I'm into. She said to me, "Have you ever heard of Project Censored?" And I was only out in California for a little while when I had this reading done, so I hadn't heard of Project Censored at the time. She described it to me as this class at Sonoma State University, which was it was like an investigative journalism class within a sociology department. And they would go out and the students would research the stories that have the most effect on working class people that are actually being systematically censored by the corporate media, stories that we need to get out and know. And they would put out a book every year. Well, this really just, I could feel something really heavily connected with this Project Censored class. So I went out and picked up a copy of the book that year and was reading some of the stories, and I saw exactly what she was talking about, where here was a story, number one, that I was reading in the Project Censored book about the truth of why we were in a certain part of the world, and then I was remembering the story that they showed on the corporate media, and I said, you know, there are hidden agendas going on, and there's information we're not receiving. So ever since then, I would pick up this book every year, a new book would come out, and I would send it out as a Christmas present or a birthday present to family and friends who are also interested in truth-seeking and getting the real news. My parents were really, they could tell I was interested in this class. They kept saying, you know, "You're going to take this class maybe one of these days or become an intern?" And I said, you know, no, that's not the direction, but I feel something coming. And it wasn't until 2007 when I picked up the 30th anniversary edition of Project Censored, and this book had really high energy to it. And same thing, gave it out to people for Christmas presents, and that was my big thing. And then all of a sudden in January 2007, it's when I had this insight. And it basically came in the form of taking Project Censored and making it into a documentary film for the Sonoma International Film Festival. And I mean, I could see the thing clear as day. It was all done in my mind. And as I was holding that insight, I said, okay, I need to set an intention around this. And the intention I set was to find somebody who's connected to this class so we could together pitch the idea and make Project Censored into a documentary film. Later that day, I was out doing my advertising, which I was in charge of real estate advertising, and I went to a home that was on the broker tour. And it was hosted by an agent from Petaluma. His name was Doug Hecker. And so I came in there with my media kits, and I had my business cards, and I had my newspapers tucked under my arm. And I went in, you know, Christopher Oscar, real estate advertising, Snowman Tribune, and he said, Doug Hecker, Frank Howard Allen, Petaluma. And out of nowhere, he says to me, you know, you guys used to print my paper. And I kind of, you know, who's we guys? What do you mean? And he says, I was the editor at the Sonoma State University college newspaper called The Star. And you guys, the Snowman Tribune, you're a publishing company too, right? And at the time, we were a publishing company. He says, well, you guys used to print my paper. So I say to him, you know, Sonoma State University, have you heard of Project Censored? And he says, heard of it. I took the class. I'm published in the book. And so, you know, I said to him with conviction, well, I'm taking Project Censored and turning it into a documentary film for the Sonoma International Film Festival. And, you know, you could just see the light bulbs going off and the energy going on there. And he says, you know, what a great idea. I was a journalism major with screenwriting and film as a background. And I said, you know, I was journalism major with screenwriting and film as a background. And, you know, right then and there, you know, we could tell we were onto something there. And this intention that I had set to find someone connected to the class had happened right here at an open house on Newcomb Street in Sonoma. And so we met a few days later, discussed it a little bit further, and he said, you know what we need to do? We need to pitch this idea to the professor of the class, of Project Censored. And I said, well, that's why you're here. And so fast forward to a few weeks later, he had set up the meeting, we sat down, I told him all about the idea for the film, and I had already put it into different acts and how it would play out. And he says, you know, because of the local connection and your passion and what your background is and what you want to do with this class and making it into a film, and he says, and because of you, Doug, you know, the fact that you're a former student and we're published in one of the books, he says, I'm giving you guys the rights to make this film, make Project Censored into a documentary film. And that was back in 2007. And now here we are in 2013. And, you know, the interviews with Noam Chomsky, Howard Zinn, Greg Palast, Kevin Donaher, John Perkins, Nora Burroughs Friedman. I mean, on and on and on of taking all of these people who have, you know, spoken out, written books, are teachers, authors, publicists that have been on broadcast TV. They're all about critical thinking and teaching others and becoming messengers of peace and truth seekers is what I like to, you know, refer them to. Everybody getting together on our film, and we've taken all their voices, and with the help of Mike Fisher, fantastic editor with Fish Tank Pictures, and he was able to weave the story together that we had already put down into place and make it into a cinematic, magnificent piece. I can't even describe how excited I am, and this year is our year. We're debuting our film, premiering it at the Sonoma International Film Festival. I've learned so much, and there are so many people out there that are willing to take up the fight for truth and willing to just get out there and, you know, like we talk about, you know, activism. What is activism? You know, we're making this film. You know, this, I believe, is our purpose, you know, to take what we've known. When I look back at the classes I studied, investigative journalism, sociology, filmmaking, screenwriting, and to have it all come together here in Sonoma, where it came in as Project Censored the movie. And now here we are. This is our journey. Thank you for sharing it with us, and we hope you enjoy the film.